Delphi. Well, most people know Delphi as the site of the double murders of Abigail Williams and Libby German. But Delphi is more than just a crime scene because, as I found out, the name itself carries ancient weight. And when I started to follow that thread, I uncovered connections that stretch far beyond this Indiana city. And in fact, as far as New York City and even Paris, France. Let's find out how and why. Welcome back to the channel, guys. I am Faye, your host and your intuitive and your energy reader with a specialty in post-cognitive energy reading, which definitely came into play here. But in addition to that, on this channel, we are dismantling the matrix one psychic energy reading at a time. And boy, oh boy, did I do a lot of dismantling in this video, because part of the dismantling of the matrix is pattern recognition. And when I tell you my mind was literally, like, you know that mind blown emoji? That was me when I was looking into this case. So there's a lot of patterns that I started to recognize here that I'm really excited to share with you guys. Now, because of that, please trust your content creator when I request that you watch this video all the way through. Because if you do not, you are not going to get the full breadth and scope of everything that I uncovered, both in my psychic energy reading as well as in the pattern recognitions. So even if you cannot watch this video all the way through in one sitting, pause it and come back to it, because I want you guys to get the full breadth and scope of everything that was shown to me, both psychically as well as with my pattern recognition. Because this story, as I said in the intro, extends far beyond one city in Indiana and in fact is connected globally. Now, before we get into the actual dismantling of the matrix, we're ironically enough going to evidently appear to be reinforcing it by exploring the so-called 3D facts of this case. However, it's a reinforcement with intention, because only when we understand what is said about it can we then dismantle it and then share the truth of the case and the truth of the matter with you guys. Now, this is a case that I think had garnered a fair amount of attention a few years ago, of which I knew absolutely nothing. So if you've been here for a while, then you know that I never ever do any 3D research prior to doing any sort of a channeling session. This was certainly the case here. And if you are new here, well then, welcome. Welcome to the channel. You now know that I will never do 3D research prior to sitting down and channeling any subject, because I never want my channeling to be influenced by the so-called 3D information. So again, the facts of the case were completely unknown to me. And in fact, I've never even looked at the Wikipedia page until right this very second. So outside of the girls' names and the town in which the crime had occurred, I am literally reading the Wikipedia page for the first time right now with you. So let's see what their Wikipedia page says. The murders of Abigail Williams and Libby German, also known as the Delphi Murders, occurred on February 13th, 2017 in Delphi, Indiana. Their bodies were discovered near the Manon High Bridge Trail, part of the Delphi Historical Trails, from where the girls disappeared the previous day. The murders received extensive media coverage, in part due to the video and audio recordings released by law enforcement that came from German's smartphone, which recorded an individual believed to be the killer. The case remained unresolved for 5 years until 2022, when Richard M. Allen was arrested and charged with the murders. He was found guilty in 2024 and sentenced to 130 years in prison. Now that's just the basic bitch first paragraph of the Wikipedia page, which really doesn't tell us a lot about the case, so let's dig a little bit deeper. So further on in the Wikipedia page, it says that at 1:30 p.m. on February 13th, 13-year-old Abigail and 14-year-old Liberty were dropped off by German's older sister, Kelsey German, on County Road 300 North, east of the Hoosier Heartland Highway. The girls were hiking on the Manon High Bridge over Deer Creek among woodland in remote Deer Creek Township. At 2:07 p.m., German used social media to post a photo of Williams walking the bridge, and after this incident, they were not heard from again. They were reported missing at 5:30 p.m. after they had failed to meet German's father at 3:15 p.m. The families initially searched for the girls themselves before calling the police. Authorities searching the area did not initially suspect foul play in the disappearance. However, this changed when the bodies of the girls were found around noon the next day, just half a mile east of the abandoned Manon High Bridge. Police did not initially release details of how the girls were unalived. And as early as February 15, 2017, Indiana State Police began circulating a still image of an individual reportedly seen on the Manon High Bridge Trail near where the two girls were slain, and the grainy photograph appears to capture a white male, hands in pocket, head down, walking on the rail bridge towards the girls. A few days later, the person in the photograph, dubbed the Bridge Guy, was named as the prime suspect in the double homicide. On February 22nd, the law enforcement released an audio recording during which the voice of the suspect, although muffled, is heard to say, quote, "down the hill," end quote. At this news conference, officials credited the source of the audio and imagery to German's smartphone and further regarded her as a so-called hero. Please keep this in mind because it will directly correlate to the energy reading. But again, she was credited as a hero for having had the presence of mind and fortitude to secretly record the exchange. Police indicated that additional evidence from the phone had been secured, but would not release further details so as not to, quote, compromise any future trial, end quote. By this time, the reward offered in the case was set at $41,000. Now, 2% personal opinion, I find it to be rather, yes, extraordinary that she had the presence of mind to record her abductor, of which she is regaled a hero, but did not actually think to text nor call a family member. Okay. On July 17th, police distributed a composite sketch of someone sought as a person of prime interest in the unaliving. The sketch was apparently created from eyewitness accounts of a hiker on the Delphi Historic Trail the day the girls had vanished. Investigators stated, sorry, not laughing because it's funny, but you'll understand why soon. Investigators stated they had reason to believe that the suspect might be hiding in plain sight and was almost certainly familiar with the Delphi area from living there, working there, or for other reasons, which we will come to explore. An additional plea was made for help in identifying the driver of a vehicle left abandoned off the Hoosier Heartland Highway in Delphi at the former Child Services Office between noon and 5 p.m. on the day of the unaliving. In September 2022, investigators reviewed a misfiled tip, after a volunteer clerk discovered the error. Richard Allen's last name was recorded incorrectly on the tip when submitted, and the file was therefore wrongly marked as cleared. The file clerk deduced that the tip from years earlier was regarding Richard Allen and brought it to the case's investigator. In the tip, Richard Allen self-reported 3 days after the unaliving to being on the trail on the day of the unaliving and seeing 3 girls on the trails. Which strikes me as odd and not at all the behavior of a guilty person. Typically, guilty people do not want to place themselves at a crime location and want to have any sort of association to that location. But here he is reporting himself there. On October 26, 2022, Richard Allen was taken into custody and appeared in court on October 28th. On October 31st, Indiana State Police announced that Allen had been charged with 2 counts of unaliving in the case. On November 29, 2022, Judge Francis Gull issued an order to unseal the probable cause affidavit that led to Allen's arrest. According to the redacted documents, video footage recovered from German's phone showed one of the victims mentioning the word, quote, pow pow instrument, AGUN, as a man wearing a dark jacket and jeans approached them and ordered them to go, quote, down the hill, end quote. Investigators believe Allen is the man seen in the video. Investigators also found a .40 caliber unspent round less than 2 feet from one of the victims' bodies, but between the 2 victims. It was later determined that the round came from a gun owned by Allen. A witness said she saw a man walking away from the bridge wearing a blue-colored jacket and blue jeans and was muddy and bloody, end quote. Another witness and tip mentioned that the car was parked oddly and appeared to be parked in a way as if to hide its license plate. Very interesting observation. Investigators said the description of the vehicle matched a vehicle that Allen owned in 2017. According to a probable cause affidavit, Allen was interviewed by police in 2017 and said he was on the trail that afternoon for around 2 hours. The document also said that in a subsequent interview in October 2022, Allen told authorities he had worn, quote, jeans and a black or blue jacket, end quote, and that the day he had gone to the bridge, it was with the intention of watching fish. Now we are in the trial and sentencing portion of the Wikipedia page. On December 2nd, 2022, Judge Gull issued a gag order until January 2023. Allen's defense attorneys argued to move the trial out of Carroll County based on concerns about juror bias due to what attorneys described as extensive media attention and a highly publicized nature of the case. But if it's so highly publicized that people in other states knew about it, it really makes one wonder if he would get an entirely unbiased hearing anyway. In October 2023, Judge Gull removed the defense attorneys, citing gross negligence due to crime scene photos being leaked from their office. The attorney's removal was appealed to the Indiana Supreme Court, in which the justices of the Indiana Supreme Court reinstated the defense attorneys to the case. And is it me, or does that not sound like some sort of giant reveal? Anyway, the trial began on October 18th, 2024 in Delphi. During the trial, prosecutors stated, now this might be a little bit gory, so you may want to skip ahead a couple of seconds here. During the trial, prosecutors stated both girls had had their throats cut. Williams was found fully clothed in German's clothing, whereas German was discovered nude. An unspent .40 caliber bullet was discovered between the bodies and again was later linked to Allen's gun. Prosecutors said that Allen had admitted to the unaliving more than 60 times while incarcerated, confessing to his wife, his mother, family members, the prison warden, the psychologist who treated him in prison, and other prison employees and other inmates. Which again, 2% personal opinion, that saying, "I think thou does protest too much," kind of bangs around in my head. The confessions were made in person, over the phone, and in writing. Because if you want to really make sure you got the right guy, you got to make sure that there is ample evidence to support you really have the right guy, right? Prosecutors told the jury that Allen was the, quote, bridge guy, although why did they even need to do this if he had already confessed over 60 times, but whatever. Anyway, after showing them a digitally enhanced 43-second version of the cell phone video recorded by German. A state police master trooper who had listened to more than 700 of Allen's prison phone calls testified that, quote, the voice of the bridge guy is the voice of Richard Allen, end quote. A clinical psychologist who worked for the Indiana Department of Corrections Behavioral Health testified on behalf of the defense that Allen was, quote, diagnosed with a serious mental illness, end quote, and that he had a, quote, grave disability, end quote. She testified that Allen told her he had originally planned only to SA the victims, but ran away when he saw a van nearby, and he had cut the girls' throats and covered their bodies with sticks. The defense hired a neuropsychologist from Carmel, Indiana, who testified at the trial that Allen had, quote, pretty severe depression, end quote, and work-related stress and anxiety. The jury, which had been sequestered during the trial, began deliberations on November 7th. On November 11th, 2024, Allen was convicted on all counts. On December 20th, 2024, Judge Gull sentenced Allen to 65 years for the unaliving of German and 65 years for the unaliving of Williams, with the terms to be served consecutively, resulting in a total 130 years in prison. Now, again, I'm going to remind you guys, I have never looked at this Wikipedia page prior, but in reviewing a section called Memorials after the trial and sentencing, I am coming across something that is notable to the energy reading, so I'm going to share it with you. In response to a request from German's mother in 2017, homeowners across central Indiana installed orange lights on their front porches to commemorate the girls, as well as to indicate that the unaliver remained at large at that time. That concludes the 3D information share acquired directly off of the girls' Wikipedia page. We will now get into the psychic energy reading portion. As soon as I had looked into the energy surrounding the unaliving of the girls, it was shown to me that just like Jean-Benet Ramsey and Madeleine McCann, the unaliving of Abigail Williams and Liberty German was considered to be an auspicious event for the families, but also the town of Delphi. Now, if this is the first you are hearing about the unaliving of a child being considered auspicious, it is something that I have previously looked into, and because of that, I'm not going to spend a great amount of time further expanding on it, but I will link previous content of mine down below in which I have looked into it. But just to bring anybody new up to speed on it, for members of the club, it is considered to be an auspicious event to sacrifice one of their own. And it's not going to make sense to us because we are not in the club, but yes, to those that are in the club, it's auspicious. So please see some of my linked content down below if you would like to learn more about this. But yes, this was considered to be an auspicious event for the families, but it was also shown to me that it was an auspicious event for the town of Delphi as well. Now, this was something I had never seen before, because yes, I had been previously shown it's auspicious for the families, and not just on a one-to-one instance like Madeleine McCann and Jean-Benet Ramsey, but sometimes there are big events where a lot of club family children are unalived at one time, which would necessitate some sort of a false flag event, usually some sort of a pow-pow event that occurs in a school. So yes, while I had previously been shown auspicious for families and even many multiple families at once, I had never been shown that it would be auspicious for an entire town. So as my conscious mind is starting to reflect on this, I hear a word which I later parse out to be a name. And the word that I hear over and over and over again through my clairaudient gifts and abilities is Odin. Odin, 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 Odin. And literally my guides are saying or chirping in my ear over and over and over again, Odin, 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 Odin. And I am told that this was not just an auspicious event for the families, but was also a sacrifice for Odin. Okay. So now that I know this was a sacrifice for somebody by the name of Odin, of course I had to stop my channeling and I had to look into who this Odin is and why a sacrifice was made for him in the first place. So according to ChatGPT, Odin is a major god in Norse mythology. In fact, he is considered the chief god and often called the Allfather. He rules over Asgard, the realm of the gods, but he is not just a king of gods like Zeus would be considered, but is in fact more complex and mysterious. Because of what it is said that he rules over. So he is a wisdom seeker, even at great personal cost, as he had sacrificed one of his own eyes to gain knowledge. And maybe your mind was activated like my mind when I was reading this and hearing about sacrificing one of his own eyes. Kind of got me thinking about the symbolism that a lot of celebrities do when they cover one of their eyes with their hand. And it makes me wonder if that's in fact some sort of a nod to Odin. Now, maybe it is a nod to Odin, who here in these first few images anyway takes on a horned appearance, which in my eye anyway makes him resemble Satan. Now, I am not suggesting that Odin and Satan are one and the same, because Odin is of Norse mythology and he's of Viking descent, and Satan is a Judeo-Christian teaching. I'm just pointing something out for you to keep in mind for a little bit later on. But back to the celebrities covering their eye here. So again, maybe it is a nod to Odin, or perhaps it's symbolic, that just as Odin had sacrificed an eye for wisdom and knowledge, that these celebrities are signaling that they too have sacrificed something, or perhaps even someone, of importance and significance for their success in Hollywood or the music industry. Now, that sacrifice could either be, again, something, or someone that's important to they themselves, like a family member, or it could be where they would pledge the unaliving of somebody else, and that other person is important to their family members, certainly. So in that sense, whether it's a nod to Odin or Satan, the message is essentially they're the same. They're signaling to others in the industry that they too have made a sacrifice for what is important to them. So it essentially becomes another way of flashing their club affiliation to fellow members, and perhaps it's also karmic retribution too. Now, I also want to point out that some of the photos you're going to be seeing here are not just of celebrities, but also of brands or magazines that may be featuring celebrities or non-celebrities on a cover or in an ad campaign, but again, it's with their eye being covered. Sometimes with their hand, sometimes a bandana, a hat, a pin, their hair, a flower. But nevertheless, one of their eyes is still being concealed. So this too serves as a signal that the publication or brand is also flashing their club affiliation. Now, another interesting point is that Odin had sacrificed himself by hanging on a tree for 9 days and nights while being pierced by a spear. And again, this was done for knowledge. So trees in Norse mythology are the bridge between worlds, which also makes me think of the tree of knowledge in the Garden of Eden. And if you have not yet seen my fantastic video on the Garden of Eden and the story of creation, I have linked that down below, which is a very insightful exploration and touches on the symbolism of the tree of knowledge. But again, in Norse mythology, trees are the bridge between worlds. So Odin sacrificing himself by connecting himself to the tree, it was an offering between realms for him to obtain hidden knowledge that is not or was not available to him in the 3D material plane. Now, in Delphi, the girls were slain by a tree, and they were covered with twigs, also from a tree. And a little later on, I'm going to reveal to you what the town was unlocking with the sacrifice of them at a tree. But again, all of this symbolism, we have horns, we have trees, and we also have Odin sacrificing an eye for hidden knowledge, which immediately made me think of the all-seeing eye on the American currency, which previously I have shared with you is Satan's all-seeing eye. So we have horns, eyes, trees. So Odin has horns, Satan has horns. Odin sacrificed himself at a tree for knowledge. The girls were sacrificed at a tree, and I'll tell you why a little bit later on. And all of this is a connection, and it actually spans across different religions, Norse mythology and Judeo-Christian teachings, but it is still all connected to hidden knowledge, power, and secret societies. Because part of dismantling the matrix is noticing patterns, and boy, oh boy, are there a ton of patterns intermixed between this case and celebrities and Satan and Norse mythology. And we're just scratching the surface. So keep watching the video all the way through so I can unlock that hidden knowledge and share it with you. And yes, by the way, the photos are still going on because there have been so many fucking celebrities that have revealed their association with the club by covering their eye, one of their eyes. And one last thing to keep in mind. The tree is said to be the bridge between realms, and, well, did anyone else notice that one little fact that the girls had actually disappeared on a bridge? Symbolism is literally everywhere. Now, I'm not going to rehash this in too much detail right now. However, I will share a couple of photos because I've extensively covered this in my video on the Freemasons. But again, horns. So whether it's a reference and a nod to Odin or Satan, when a celebrity flashes horn symbolism with their hands, they are very much telling you they are in the club. And since we're spending all this time speaking about symbolism, here's some more for you. Tonight I was driving home, and it's literally the same route that I have taken hundreds of times. But this time something caught my eye. It's a street named Odin. And funny enough, that street leads straight into the parking lot of the Hollywood Bowl, which is one of the premier and most well-known music venues in Los Angeles. Also a music venue where many of the world's biggest performers have taken the stage. And yes, many of those I've talked about before. And these are the same performers that have made deals, the ones that spellcast from the stage, and the ones that have sacrificed quite a bit for that success. Again, to remind you, Odin sacrificed an eye, and here we have a street named Odin leading straight to the Hollywood Bowl, which reminds me of a time a band called Vampire Weekend performed here. Vampire Weekend, with their black and white poster, which resembles a Masonic floor, a whirl on their logo, and one could even say a notable name for the band itself. I mean, I'm sure it's just another coincidence, right? Now, Odin is also said to be the god of war and death, and is said that it is he who decides the fate of warriors in battle, but he also chooses the so-called most qualified of warriors to take to Valhalla. He is also the master of magic and a specific kind called, I don't know if I'm pronouncing this correctly, but Seor magic or Seor magic, which was considered an unmanly version of magic, which showed Odin's willingness to break societal norms and in fact to even gender bend. And maybe that also sounds familiar to you. And he was a shapeshifter and wanderer, often disguising himself as an old cloaked wanderer, searching for knowledge and testing humans. Maybe testing humans also sounds familiar. He is said to be a paradoxical god, as he is both wise but deceitful, noble but ruthless, and he embodies death and rebirth, and that wisdom and power only come from sacrifice. Which again got me thinking about celebrities and how they will sacrifice somebody else to climb through the ranks in attaining and achieving their own personal success in the industry. And just like celebrities are sacrificing something or someone for fame, and just like Odin sacrificed his eye for knowledge, in club families, the sacrifice of a child serves some sort of higher perceived purpose. even if it's just to secure their own ascension in the ranks of the club, just as it was for the Ramseys and the McCanns. But there is some sort of a pattern here. So again, after concluding reading about all of that in ChatGPT, Abigail and Liberty were a sacrifice to this god Odin, and it was considered to be an auspicious event for not just the families, but the entire town, and in fact, for Delphi as a whole. And maybe you are also like me and you're wondering, well, why? I did. Because as my conscious mind was mulling this over, it comes to me. And the word Delphi, to me anyway, sounds like something I would hear in a fraternity or a sorority, like maybe Chi Delphi Kappa or something like that. So now my conscious mind is taking me on a further investigation, and I have to look up the meaning of the word Delphi. And it turns out Delphi is in fact a Greek word, and it originates from the word Delphis, meaning womb, as in a woman's womb, as in where life itself is created. So, the unaliving of the girls was for Odin, a god that rules death and rebirth. And it's a god who prescribes that wisdom and power can only come from sacrifice in a town whose name literally means womb. So now I hop out of my conscious mind and go right back into my channeling, because it seems like I've picked up all the pieces that I need to here. And it is shown to me that the origins of this town energetically, as in its blueprint, is all about death, birth, creation, and the cycles of life and the role that sacrifice plays in it. As in, endings and death trigger a rebirth and a new start. And it was shown to me that these two girls were not some sort of a crime of opportunity like it's been sold to us as being, but rather they were very intentionally chosen for this. And not just for the benefit of their families, but for the entire town as well. And not only that, but I think they knew it. As in, they knew that they were going to be unalived for this purpose, even if they did not know specifically when or where it was going to happen, but I do believe they knew the why. And the why is because this god Odin chooses the warriors that cross over. As in, only the most worthy of warriors does he in fact take to Valhalla. And yes, that is why I had shared with you what was said in their Wikipedia page about the girls being heralded some sort of a hero because she had the presence of mind to record the voice of her unaliver. But again, I found it to be suspicious. She did not think to contact any of her family members, because the purpose wasn't in fact for the family to be alerted that something was wrong and then to go over there and pick them up or try to rescue them. No, it was to reinforce posthumously the idea that the girls were heroes and thus were worthy of being chosen by Odin to be sacrificed. And if you are wondering, how could these two girls be okay with knowing that they were going to be unalived, even if they didn't know when or where? Well, I'm going to remind you that to members of the club, sacrificing a child is considered to be auspicious and an honor. So these two girls and their families being told that they were chosen by Odin, the god of all gods. So imagine what an honor this was presented to them to be. They were told that they were chosen because they were warriors, and the entirety of their life had in fact led up to this honor and auspicious event. And if you're wondering why specifically them, well, it's because first and foremost, this was a club family. And in addition to that, they were friends, and thus they were energetically connected because of it. And their sacrifice was meant to serve as some sort of a connection between an ending and a new beginning that would usher in some sort of a rebirth. Now, we're going to talk a little bit more about what this rebirth was a little bit later on. Don't worry, we get there, but not just yet. But imagine from their point of view being told this. Imagine how seductive that could be to a club family and to two little girls that were raised in the club. So imagine the perceived specialness that would accompany this presentation, especially to two young girls who at that age probably felt utterly insignificant, and thus being told that their sacrifice acted as a key to a door, and that this was a door that could only be opened by their unaliving. Well, that's the making of some serious seduction. And as I have shared with you guys in my members exclusive video on Satan, all of Satan's seductions are bespoke. This certainly sounds like a bespoke seduction to me. So after hypothesizing what this must have felt like from the girl's point of view, I decided to see if I can connect to the girl's energy and ask if my assumptions are correct, and hear directly from them what this experience was like. So when I make the effort to connect to their energy, they both come in together. As in, not one, not the other, but both. As in, they really were connected in life and had such a strong bond that has carried over into the afterlife, and that's why they both had come into me. And even though they both come in, it's only Liberty that had chosen to interact with me, while Abigail chose just to stand by and observe. And when Liberty had come into me, she had held up her pointer finger in front of her mouth, just like this, to indicate that she was keeping quiet. This also happens to be one of the club gestures. And after connecting to Liberty's energy, I think I know why this may in fact be the case. Because from the girl's point of view, you do not speak about this with those outside of the club, because it's not something we, as in those that are not in the club, could ever possibly understand. And she asks me rhetorically, how could we? Because just like to us, we don't understand how unaliving a child is considered auspicious, how could we understand it from their point of view that this too was considered to be auspicious? How could we possibly ever understand that this was their sole mission and purpose in life? And that they were part of something so much bigger than themselves. But nevertheless, it did get me wondering when Liberty had shared with me that they were part of something so much bigger than themselves, what exactly did that mean? Because I had already been shown that they were a key designed to kick off some sort of a rebirth. So I asked her, a rebirth of what? And she did not choose to answer. However, I was able to see the energy in and around her, and it was shown to me that their sacrifice and their blood that was spilt on the land was with the intention of creating all new energies in the land, as in ley lines. And thus to influence the energy running through the area, but not just that area, but to connect to other energetic hubs and to create a new energetic network. And if this is the first you're hearing about ley lines, it's essentially bands of energy that run under the ground. So if you've ever wondered why different cities in the same state are so different, it's because of the energy of the ley lines. If you've ever traveled to other countries and seen the way that other societies live, it's because of the influence of the ley lines. So essentially, by spilling their blood onto the land, they were creating new energetic ley lines to influence that area, but not just that area, but to connect to other hubs as well. Because blood within itself, just like everything, carries a vibration, and the sacrifice in that particular location in the city of Delphi with a notable Greek name, which means womb and signifies an energetic rebirth, created an energetic incision. So imagine a C-section. And that incision was designed to create new energies and to lay entirely new ley lines. So essentially, they were coding the earth with the sacrifice, and that would connect to a network of other hubs and essentially hijack any other energies that existed there prior. Now we're going to discuss all of this up ahead, but in case you were wondering what had occurred the night the girls were unalived, that was shown to me as well. And it had been shown to me that the men in the town were dressed as women, and the women in the town were dressed as men, because remember, Odin was a shapeshifter, and he also practiced a kind of magic that was considered to be unmanly. So one way or another, they were welcoming Odin's energy into the town, because remember, the sacrifice was all for him. Because remember, Odin was a shapeshifter. So one way that they could welcome his energy in was by blurring the lines between men and women. Which, yeah, also really does make me wonder about all of the gender bending that we see playing out in the world today. But that is most certainly a video for a different day. So not only were they blurring the lines between men and women, but they were also inverting them, if only just temporarily. And it was shown to me that the men danced around a fire and the women ran through the woods acting like hunters. Now the girls were still alive at this point and they were observing it, and they were observing the sexual debauchery that was soon to follow. But then it was shown to me that their throats were indeed cut, but no, not by Richard Allen, but was cut specifically for the purposes of blood, sex, magic, ritual. And we know all about that, don't we? Then, once the sexual debauchery had concluded and the girls were unalived, it was at that point that the bodies were staged. Now, if you are just listening, you are going to want to look at your screen because I am sharing a series of images here that are displaying the importance and the significance of how and why the bodies were staged. Because yes, there is symbolism all over this case. And all of the events that had followed the mysterious unaliving of these two girls was just one giant dog and pony show. As in, the families and the townspeople read from the script of the characters that they were to play. As in grieving parents, because again, this was an auspicious event for they themselves. And a so-called concerned community, because also remember, this was an auspicious event for the entire town of Delphi. And on it went, with characters just playing roles. And all the mysteries that had followed, well, that was just an amplification for show, as in a misdirection. Look here, not there. See what we want you to see, but do not in fact see the truth. And what was the truth of the matter is that Delphi wasn't just a backdrop of a tragedy, but it was an altar. And all of our attention that was directed at the town of Delphi thereafter was a battery designed to amplify and boost the town's power. So the sacrifice served many purposes. It reinforces the matrix to those that do not know or did not know that that's what in fact was going on and how our attention was being used. But it was also a serious creation of Loosh, designed to supercharge the new ley lines that had been created with the sacrifice of the girls in this town. So it essentially amplified the corruption of the earth and created long-lasting energetic reverberations, further charging the site of the actual sacrifice, as well as the surrounding land, and turning it into a conduit to carry and expand the energy outwards. So all of our collective attention and energy that was directed there acted in fact as a battery pack, further directing the energy outwards. And to where, you may be wondering? Well, to other energetic hubs. And what are those other energetic hubs? They're the locations of other similar types of events. So think Sandy Hook, Uvalde, Texas, Columbine, Canton, Massachusetts, and yes, even Moscow, Idaho, but just to name a few. And have notable events not occurred in these locations? But not just notable events, because it was also shown to me that there is something rather notable about all of these towns as well. As in, they're not real towns. Not really, which I know sounds weird. Stay with me, I will explain how and why. So yes, they look real, but they're actually more akin to TV shows and movies that are filmed at Universal Studios here in Los Angeles. So look at it like these towns are in fact more akin to some sort of a movie set. But not just a movie set in which the outside of a house or a building looks real, but if the camera were actually to go onto the other side of the wall, you would see that there is nothing there. But think of it more akin to the town in which the movie The Truman Show was filmed in. So it's not just day actors that appear on set for the day and then they go home at the end of the day, but it's more as in actors that were cast into some sort of a long-term role. So there's the main character himself that's played by Jim Carrey, who is unknowingly cast into this TV show that's broadcasted all around the world. Now, one could say we, the 99 percenters that are not in the club, we're the equivalent of the main character in the Truman Show. Then there are the long-standing actors that are cast, such as to play Truman's wife, his parents, his best friend. You see where I'm going with this?
Why don't you let me fix you some of this new Mococo drink? All natural cocoa beans from the upper slopes of Mountain Nicaragua, no artificial sweeteners.
What the hell are you talking about? Who are you talking to?
I've tasted other cocos. This is the best.
What the hell does this have to do with anything? Tell me what's happening!
As in, the people that live in these towns, they are long-term actors and they carry on some sort of a normal life, but they're actors nonetheless.
Can I help? Oh, yeah, I have an appointment at Gable Enterprises. What's happening?
Nothing.
Just tell me what's happening.
Drop the poster. We're remodeling.
No, you're not. What are those people doing back
None
there?
of our business. It's none of yours either.
Don't tell me what's happening. I'll report you!
And guess what? This is even true for the politicians, and most certainly, especially the politicians, because it was shown to me in more than one occasion. Specifically here, but also when I had looked into the energy of John O'Keefe, who will be getting his own future video, that the politicians are essentially little more than lame ducks because they actually have no control over the towns that they preside over. And if you're wondering who does, it's the police. Just like those in Canton, Massachusetts, and Uvalde, Texas, the police broke all protocol to ensure the outcome that they had desired. And the outcome was not to save the littles, but to ensure that the littles were unalived. Because just like in the Truman Show, the main character doesn't know he's on a TV show or in a movie, but all of the townspeople around him do know. So then this got me thinking about Masons and wondering if there's a Masonic lodge, specifically in Uvalde, Texas. And what do you know? There is. It's Uvalde Lodge number 472, and it was established in 1877. Curious, because that's old, and according to public records, Uvalde was only incorporated in 1888. So the lodge preceded the incorporation of the town by one whole year. More curious still is that at the 1890 census, there were only 2,000 residents in Uvalde. Small town. So it's a newly incorporated town with a Masonic lodge. And if you're curious, the current population of Uvalde is just under 16,000 people. Small town with a very, very big notable event. Okay, so this got me wondering if Canton, Massachusetts, where John O'Keefe was unalived, also has a Masonic lodge. Hot damn, it does. It's the Blue Hill Lodge, established in 1863. Now, the city of Canton itself was incorporated in 1797, and prior to that, it was part of a town by the name of Stoughton. Now, interestingly enough, it was also named Canton because it was believed to be the exact opposite side of the earth from Canton, China. Not sure how they knew this back then, but okay, whatever. So there was no consensus back then when it was incorporated, but the total population in Stoughton was 4,500, and when it had separated and became its own city by the name of Canton, it had only taken a small part of the population. And at the 1800s census, it had a recorded population of 1,500 people. In the 1860 census, which was just 3 years prior to the establishment of the Blue Hill Lodge Masonic Temple, it had a reported population of 2,500 people. So again, we have a small town with a small population and a Masonic lodge. So maybe you too are like me and you're wondering, does Sandy Hook, Connecticut have a Masonic lodge? And yes, it does. It is the Hissam Lodge number 18, and it was established in 1791. Now, Sandy Hook itself was never actually incorporated because it's always been part of Newton, Connecticut. And again, in the early 1700s, there was no census. So there was no official reporting on the population. So the closest guess is at the time the Masonic Lodge was established, the population was 200 people. So again, we have another small town with a Masonic lodge. So now I'm wondering about Columbine, Colorado. Now, Columbine itself does not have a Masonic lodge, but there are 3 within a couple of miles of it. Interesting. Okay, so the closest one is in Littleton, Colorado. It's the Weston Lodge number 22, which was established in 1872. Now, Littleton itself was not incorporated until 1890, so best estimates as of 1872, when the Masonic Lodge was built, the population was between 200 and 250 people. Tiny town, Masonic Lodge. So now I'm wondering about Moscow, Idaho. And wouldn't you know it, they have a Masonic lodge too. It's Paradise Lodge number 17, established in 1885. Now, Moscow itself wasn't even incorporated until 1887, which was 2 years after the establishment of the Masonic Lodge, and the population was only 300 people. In fact, Moscow itself was not even settled with one person until the 1870s. And as of the 2020 census, Moscow has a population of 25,435. And guess what? The Masonic presence in Moscow, Idaho is very significant. Okay, so now my conscious mind is really fucking activated because I've been doing all of this 3D research, and I start to wonder if there are Masonic lodges located in every location of a true crime case we've looked into here on this channel. Like, I'm wondering, is there a Masonic lodge in Aruba where Natalie Holloway was unalived? And yes, there are in fact several Masonic temples in Aruba. 3 to be exact. And while dates are not available for all 3, one was established in 1920 when there were only about 9,000 residents. But then again, somewhere between 1920 and today, there's been the establishment of 2 other Masonic temples. So then I'm wondering about Modesto, California, where Scott and Lacey Peterson had lived. And yes, there is. It's the Modesto Lodge number 206, established in 1870, when only about 600 people had lived there. So now I'm wondering about Islandton, South Carolina, where Alex Murdaugh lived. And yes, there was the Hudson Lodge number 373, established in 1949. So now I'm wondering about Grand Teton National Park, where Gabby Petito was unalived. And yes, there is one in Jackson Hole, Wyoming, directly adjacent to the park. And the Masonic Lodge in Jackson is the Jackson number 48 Masonic Lodge, established in 1942. Okay, so now I'm wondering, is there a Masonic temple where the Unabomber had lived? Well, he had lived in a very rural town near Lincoln, Montana, and while there is not one directly in Lincoln, there are 3 different Masonic temples in neighboring towns. Okay, so now I'm wondering if there's a Masonic temple where JonBenet Ramsey had lived and where she had crossed over. Well, of course there is. There's the Boulder Lodge number 14, established in 1866. Now I'm wondering about Madeleine McCann. Well, here's the thing about Madeleine McCann, because she had disappeared on vacation, But I had assumed that her parents had a lodge near where they had lived in Leicester, England. And surprise, surprise, probably no surprise, there are in fact two Masonic lodges. There's the St. John's number 279, which was established in 1790, and the Albert Edward number 1560, established in 1875. Okay, but what about where Madeleine McCann had disappeared? Which was Praia de Luz, Portugal. And holy fucking hell, guess what, guys? There's a Masonic lodge there too. It's the Lodge of Discoveries, which interestingly enough is affiliated with the United Grand Lodge in England, which is where the McCanns live. And that lodge was established in 1990 in this sleepy little resort town where the population is only between 2,000 and 3,000 people. Okay. Now I'm wondering if there's a Masonic lodge in Manhattan, because what do we know happened in Manhattan? 9/11. But more specifically than just Manhattan, I wanted to know if there was a Masonic lodge close to Ground Zero. And yes, it is the St. John's Lodge, which was established in 1757. At the time when the entire island of Manhattan, and not just the neighborhood itself, had anywhere between 15 to 16,000 people on the entire island of Manhattan, not just that neighborhood. Okay. So now I am well and truly puzzled and decided to look into some notable worldwide events that I have not yet looked into myself through an energetic lens, such as Waco, Texas. Where David Koresh's compound had been burned down to the ground. And what do you know? There are two lodges in Waco, Texas. The Masonic Lodge number 92, established in 1851, and the Grand Lodge, established in 1838. Okay. So Waco, Texas itself has two lodges, and the Grand Lodge was established before Waco was even Waco, as in before itself was an incorporated town. But at that time, there were only 3 to 4 families living there, which according to ChatGPT translates to roughly 20 to 30 people, absolute maximum. The second lodge was established in 1851 when there were only 152 people living in Waco. So that seems kind of odd to have two lodges in a town with only 152 people, don't you think? So then I'm wondering about Oklahoma City, where the federal building was bombed by, allegedly, Timothy McVeigh. And it turns out that, yes, the Oklahoma City Lodge number 36, which was established in 1890, when the population was 4,151 people. Okay, so then I'm wondering if there's a Masonic temple near where George Floyd was unalived. And what do you know? There's not just one, but there's 3 Masonic temples, and the closest one was just 3/4 of a mile away. It's the Prince Hall Masonic Temple. All right. But what else do we know had happened after George Floyd had been unalived? Well, there was a lot of civil unrest around the country with a lot of mostly peaceful protests. Who totally did not burn down their cities because the news told us that they didn't. But okay, whatever, because cities in fact did burn, including portions of my own and many others, but don't tell the news because they don't want us to know what we can clearly see with our own eyes. But wouldn't you know it, the cities that were hardest hit happen to also have a strong Masonic presence, which I'm sure is totally a coincidence. So it's including, but not limited to, Minneapolis, Minnesota, Portland, Oregon, and the Portland Art Museum Mark Building Masonic Temple. That's a fucking mouthful. There's also Seattle, Washington, which has multiple Masonic lodges. Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, which has a monumental and grand lodge of the entire state of Pennsylvania. as well as Kenosha, Wisconsin, and the Unity Lodge number 367. Okay, so now I'm wondering about Rogersville, Tennessee, where Summer Wells had disappeared from. And wouldn't you know it, there's a lodge there too. It's the Overton Lodge, established in 1805. And well, Rogersville itself only became incorporated in 1789. So again, it was before consensus, and the best guess is the population of the town was 300 to 500 people. So another small city with a lodge. Huh. Well, what about Petaluma, California, where Polly Klaas was abducted from her home by knife point? Yes, the Petaluma Hamilton Lodge, which was established in 1882. Okay, what about in New York City, where Eton Patz vanished while walking to school? Now, he was also the very first kid's face to appear on a milk carton. And yes, it turns out the Grand Masonic Hall, which was just a few blocks away from where he lived. Now, something else of note about milk cartons is that don't they tend to sit out on the table next to a cereal box when kids are having their breakfast in the morning? So think of all those kids eating their breakfast, looking at a picture of Eton Patz, and reading about how he had vanished while walking to school, and maybe wondering if they too themselves were going to vanish when they were walking to school. Think of all the fear that that must have caused. And fear, as we know, is the lowest, densest emotion, and the lowest, densest energy and vibration, and the generator of loosh within itself. Okay, think about that then. And here's another notable case. Hollywood, Florida, where Adam Walsh was taken from a mall and unalived. And it turns out, yes, there are two Masonic lodges. The Arlington Lodge, established in 1875 when the population was just 200 people, and the Sweet Home Lodge. So here we have two Masonic lodges for a population of 200 people. Okay.
And more recently, Charlie Kirk was unalived at an event at the Utah Valley University in Orem, Utah. So, is there a Masonic temple close by? Well, there are in fact two. The Damascus Lodge number 10, established in 1890, and the Story Lodge number 4, established in 1872. Both of those are nearby in Provo, Utah, which is just a 10 to 15 minute drive away from the university.
So all of these Masonic lodges were established in the 17 and 1800s in tiny towns, with sometimes people numbering only in the double digits. So what the actual fuck? So essentially these lodges were founded so early on and prior to when the population would justify it, as well as prior to major institutions being established, such as schools, banks, post offices, or even prisons. And you may be wondering why. So this is where I'm going to tell you that the establishment of all of these lodges were not random, but were rather very intentional. Just like it's not random that these notable events also occurred in locations that had these early lodges. But before we go any further in exploring the why, something else of note that I'm going to share with you is that in addition to all of these early lodges being developed and established in the 17 and 1800s, well, the very first president of the United States, George Washington, was also a Mason. But not only was he a Freemason, but he was in fact a Master Mason, initiated in the Fredericksburg Lodge number 4 all the way back in 1752. And a number of the United States so-called founding fathers were also Freemasons, such as Benjamin Franklin, who had signed the Declaration of Independence, as well as the US Constitution. And wouldn't you know it, Benjamin Franklin too was a Master Mason, initiated at the St. John's Lodge in 1731. Now, Benjamin Franklin was also one of the earliest known Masons in the United States, and he also helped spread Freemasonry across colonial America, as he had written and published the very first Masonic text in America all the way back in 1734. Next, we have Paul Revere, who, though not technically a statesman, had played a monumental role in the American Revolution by partaking in the Boston Tea Party. Wouldn't you know it, he too was a Master Mason, initiated in the St. Andrew's Lodge in Boston in 1761. Next, we have John Hancock, who signed the Declaration of Independence in large and bold handwriting, and thus his name is eponymous with signing something because of it. Somebody wants your John Hancock? So he too was a Master Mason, initiated at the Meridian Lodge in Quebec in 1762. Next, we have Andrew Jackson, who, if we're splitting hairs, is not technically a founding father, but certainly a transformational leader in America, as well as a former United States president. He too was a Master Mason, initiated in 1882 by the Harmony Lodge in Nashville, Tennessee. Now, we do also have a number of former American presidents that were also Masons. We have, of course, the aforementioned George Washington. Excuse me, apparently my guides really want to hammer the point to you guys that our very first American president was a Master Mason.
Next, we have James Monroe, a Master Mason, who was initiated in 1775 at only the tender age of 17, which I think means he was multi-generational.
We also have Andrew Jackson, excuse me, James Polk, who was also a master, excuse me guys, hemming at the truth here. James Polk, who was a Master Mason initiated in 1820 in Columbia, Tennessee Lodge number 31. As well as James Buchanan, also a Master Mason, initiated in 1816 in Lodge 43 in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. Andrew Johnson, a Master Mason, initiated in 1851 in Greenville Lodge, Tennessee. James A. Garfield, a Master Mason, initiated in 1861 in the Magnolia Lodge number 20 in Columbus, Ohio. William McKinley, also a Master Mason, initiated in 1865 in the Hiram Lodge number 21 in Winchester, Virginia. Theodore Roosevelt, also a Master Mason, initiated in 1901, just 18 days prior to his inauguration as United States President, which 2% personal opinion tells you all you need to know about his affiliation and loyalty. That was in the Oyster Bay, New York Lodge number 806. Then we have William H. Taft, also a Master Mason, initiated in 1909 in Kilwinning Lodge number 356 in Cincinnati, Ohio. Warren G. Harding, also a Master Mason, initiated in 1901 in the Marion Lodge number 70 in Ohio. And Franklin D. Roosevelt, Master Mason, initiated in 1911 in the Holland Lodge number 8 in New York City. Harry S. Truman, Master Mason, initiated in 1909 in Belton Lodge number 450, Missouri. And Lyndon B. Johnson, in apprentice only, that was initiated in 1937 in the Texas Lodge number 121 in Johnson City, Texas.
And lastly, we have Gerald Ford, a master mason that was initiated in 1949 in the Malta Lodge number 465 in Grand Rapids, Michigan. Now, Gerald Ford's vice president, interestingly enough, was a Rockefeller. It was Nelson Aldrich Rockefeller, who was the 41st vice president under Gerald Ford, which, again, 2% personal opinion, seems like a giant reveal. Now, outside of a Rockefeller being a vice president, 18 of the 46 United States vice presidents have been Freemasons, which is 39% of all vice presidents. And when looking at all of these former United States presidents wearing their white Masonic aprons, I noticed that the Master Mason aprons have an eye on it, like Satan's all-seeing eye, or perhaps like Odin's sacrifice eye.
And if you're hearing all of these early dates that some of these presidents were initiated and thinking you did not know that there were lodges around back then, same. So next, I decided to look into the very first Masonic lodges in America. And it was the St. John's Lodge in Boston, Massachusetts, founded in 1733. And it was operated as a charter from the Grand Lodge of England, which also happens to be the one in Praia de Luz, Portugal, that Madeleine McCann had disappeared from, that also operates under. So, curious about this, I decided to look up the first 5 Masonic lodges in America. And the next one was the Tun Tavern Lodge of Philadelphia, operating as early as 1730. The Solomon's Lodge in Savannah, Georgia, which was chartered in 1734. The St. John's Lodge in Portsmouth, New Hampshire, established in 1736, and the Fredericksburg, Virginia Lodge, which was established in 1752. And in fact, there were over 100 lodges in the United States prior to America becoming independent from England in 1776. There were 300 before the year 1800, and as of 2025, there are over 13,000 lodges in the United States. So now all of this talk about founding fathers and presidents kind of got me wondering about Masonic lodges in Washington, D.C. And well, wouldn't you know, the very first Masonic lodge to open in Washington was in 1793, which was the same year that George Washington laid the cornerstone of the United States Capitol when he was dressed in full Masonic regalia. Which kind of got me wondering about Washington, D.C. as a whole. And what I came to understand is that the Capitol, the White House, Washington's monument, and the Jefferson Memorial form a symbolic alignment for Freemasons. And the Washington Monument is in Obelisk, which we're going to talk about more coming up. And also the street layouts in Washington, D.C. form a pentagram. Huh. But it's not just Washington, D.C. that has strong Masonic ties, because also many of the early courthouses in the United States were laid with Masonic ceremonies. So as in our entire justice system is Masonic? Huh. So then I started to wonder if it's our entire justice system that's Masonic, could it be our military as well? Well, last summer I had spent time visiting family in New York. And one day I decided to take a day trip with Pip, and we had gone to visit the West Point Military Academy and Museum in West Point, New York. And upon leaving the museum, I had decided to drive around this teeny tiny, cute and quaint little town. And lo and fucking behold, guys, directly across the street from the West Point Military Academy in this teeny tiny fucking town is the Masonic Temple. Which to me made no sense, because there's not even a pizza shop in this town, but there's a Masonic temple? Okay, so looking into it, the current population in West Point, New York is under 7,000 people. So I was not personally seeing any sort of a great need for a Masonic temple to service a city without a dry cleaners, but whatever. I'm not a Mason, so how do I know what the criteria is anyway? But what I do know is that the temple was established in 1892, and according to ChatGPT, it is nearly impossible to determine the population then, because there was nothing there besides for the military base, which was in fact the very first military base established in the United States in 1802. But the town itself did not yet exist. The closest town was Highland Falls, New York, which back then is a 15 to 20 minute walk away. But here's the curious thing. The Masonic temple was not built in Highland Falls, which had a civilian population of about 2,000 to 3,000 people. No, it was built directly across the street from the military academy, which happened to have been the very first military academy established in the United States, in a town with absolutely nothing but a military academy, and the students and the professors and the dean, who were all likely Masons. Because why else would a Masonic lodge be directly across the street from a military academy and not in the town itself? Well, that's because the Masonic temple was not built to service the civilians, because if it was, it would have been built directly in Highland Falls, but it wasn't. It was built for the military and to infuse Masonic energy into it. So then that got me wondering, are the Masonic temples and lodges built around other military posts as well, both historic as well as present? Well, I'm totally not surprised to report yes. First is the Zion Lodge number 1 in Detroit, which was connected to the military regiment of the British 60th Royal American, as well as the Delaware Regiment Lodge established in 1780 for the Continental Army. But I decided to look deeper at modern day military or naval academies and found that yes, the U.S. Naval Academy in Annapolis was founded in 1845, which also happens to have the Annapolis Masonic Lodge number 89 that was established in 1872. And even closer is the Universal Lodge number 14, which was founded in 1865. So there's 2 Masonic lodges servicing the Annapolis area, which also happens to have the U.S. Naval Academy. Okay. And this was all when the population was under 5,000 people. And they needed not just 1 Masonic temple, but 2. Okay, got it. Next we have the U.S. Air Force Academy in Colorado Springs, Colorado, which was established in 1954. Now, Colorado Springs already had a Masonic temple, which was established in 1908, but another one was opened in 1973. Because why have 1 Masonic temple that's 15 miles away when you can have another one that's only 10 miles away? Next, we have the U.S. Coast Guard Academy, which was opened in 1876, and whose Masonic temple predates it by nearly 100 years when it had opened in 1794. Which makes me actually wonder if the U.S. Coast Guard was built to be near the Masonic temple. Next is the Virginia Military Institute, which was founded in 1839, and within 1 decade, the city had the Mountain City Masonic Lodge. And lastly, we have the Citadel, established in 1842 in Charleston, and the Masonic Temple had laid its cornerstone in 1871. Now, of course, none of this proves anything, and I would certainly be remiss if I did not point that out, because correlation does not prove causation, but it is certainly something to take note of, because at the very least, it seems coincidental. But since we're talking about coincidences and perhaps correlations, here's a few more I'd like to share with you. The Sharon Lodge number 327, which is located in McLean, Virginia, and is fairly close to Langley, Virginia, where the FBI trains their agents. Now, there is also a second Masonic lodge, the Alexandria, Washington Lodge number 22. And guess what? There's also a third Masonic temple, the Acacia Lodge number 16 in Clifton, Virginia. All centrally located around the Langley, Virginia FBI Training Academy. Okay, seems notable. So then I was wondering, well, what about the feds when they're all grown up and they've graduated outside of the academy? And what do you know, there's a Scottish Rites Masonic Temple, which is just 1.5 miles away from the White House and 2 miles away from the FBI federal building in Washington. There's also the Naval Lodge number 4 in Washington, which is 3 miles away from the FBI federal building and 2 miles away from the United States Capitol, as well as several other lodges that are scattered around Washington, D.C., which are most within a couple of miles of all of the federal buildings. In fact, there's a total of 47 Masonic lodges in Washington, D.C. to date. Now, this is a city with a population of 702,000 people. But for good measure, let's also note the about 500,000 people that commute daily and work in Washington, D.C., although they do not live there. So then this got me wondering, is this 47 Masonic lodges considered to be a lot? As in, for a city of 700,000 people, would this be considered excessive or just right? So ChatGPT helped me parse it out. Now, Washington, D.C., with its 47 lodges and its population of just 700,000 people, that's the equivalent of 1 lodge per 15,000 people. Virginia statewide has 276 lodges to service 8.6 million people, which is 1 lodge per 31,000 people. Maryland statewide has 104 lodges for 6.1 million people, which is 1 lodge per 59,000 people. And the national average, not just taking into account the surrounding states of Washington, D.C., is 12,000 lodges for 330 million people, which is roughly 1 Masonic lodge per 27,500 people. So by these surrounding areas and the national average, Washington, D.C. has double or more the density of lodges. So then, no, according to that statistic, D.C. is not a so-called normal city in terms of the number of Masonic lodges, but also certainly one could make the case it's not a normal city in terms of governmental importance and that it's the cornerstone of our country. So, okay, our country's capital is Masonic, our entire justice system is Masonic, ostensibly our entire military complex is Masonic as well. And also, as I had discussed, we have Washington's monument, which is an obelisk. And well, shit, sorry guys, but my guides had also informed me that the same is true of some other really rather notable monuments that are sprinkled around the globe, such as the Statue of Liberty and the Eiffel Tower. But whereas the notable events and the unaliving in some of these other areas that we had discussed acted as a fracture down into the earth to influence the ley lines, the Statue of Liberty and the Eiffel Tower, which stand tall and proud, were actually shown to me as being energetic conductors. And here's a little known fact about the Statue of Liberty that I myself did not know until my guides had told me to look into this. The cornerstone of the Statue of Liberty was laid in a Masonic ceremony overseen by the Grand Lodge in New York in 1884. And the designer of the Statue of Liberty, a man by the name of Frederick Bartholdi, was also a Freemason. Now, the placement of the Statue of Liberty, too, was shown to me as being symbolic. and it is meant to denote illumination to those coming into the new world and to act as a beacon of light to light their way as they settled into the new world. But unbeknownst to all those souls that were coming into the so-called new world, the illumination of energy was Masonic. Because yes, first and foremost, the designer himself was a Mason, and the cornerstone was laid in a Masonic ceremony. But it was also shown to me that Lady Liberty holding a torch, very intentional, because that torch is an actual representation, not just of light, but of astral light, as in Lucifer's light. Because the name Lucifer means light bringer or light bearer in Latin. So yes, that light is Lucifer's light. And as we know, Lucifer later became Satan.
Now, remember how I had said at the top when I was reading about the girls' Wikipedia page that there was something that directly connected to the energy read, and that was how the city was leaving the lights on at night in memorandum of the girls unaliving? Truly, the symbolism is everywhere.
So as in, Lucifer's light is channeled down to feed the grid and placed in a harbor surrounded by water. Well, guess what, guys? Water amplifies energy, and all the ley lines in and around New York City were overridden with satanic energy once the Statue of Liberty had been put up in a Masonic ceremony. As in, Lucifer's light is rooted into the entire grid of New York City. So now let's talk about the Eiffel Tower. It was designed by somebody named Gustave Eiffel, who also happened to work on the Statue of Liberty structure, which I'm sure is totally a coincidence. But anyway, the Eiffel Tower was constructed of metal, and guess what? Metal is a natural conductor of energy. So standing at 100 plus feet, the Eiffel Tower is essentially a giant antenna, and whatever energy and intention is conducted in the ley lines underneath the ground is being broadcasted out over Paris and perhaps the surrounding areas. Well, not placed in an actual waterway, Paris itself is absolutely rife with ley lines. And here's another little known fact that my guides had nudged me towards discovering, is that the Notre Dame was built on an ancient pagan temple site, which I'm sure is also totally a coincidence. So anyway, together the Washington Monument, the Statue of Liberty, and the Eiffel Tower are a triad of energetic symbols. They are different expressions of the same archetypes, which are designed to anchor satanic energy and then to broadcast it out and to act as energetic hubs. And speaking of obelisks, there's actually, in fact, a mini obelisk that is near where George Washington is buried on his property in Fredericksburg, Virginia, and you won't believe the reason that it is there. Check this out. So anyway, all this talk about obelisks having some sort of a purpose kind of got me thinking about other notable obelisks and monuments that are placed around the globe, such as the obelisk in St. Peter's Square in Rome by the Vatican. And also, here's another little known fact about St. Peter's Square, where the Vatican is. Well, the entire Vatican too mirrors sacred geometry that are seen in Washington, with the obelisks anchoring the energies, while the towers, such as the Eiffel Tower and the Statue of Liberty, are then pushing that energy out. So the placement of these monuments are not coincidental nor accidental either, but they are very intentional, as they were designed and placed in specific locations to catch, hold, and redirect energy, and together they form a global network of energetic anchors. So then you may be wondering, well, how do they connect to the aforementioned tragedies that we had discussed at the top of the video? Well, the unalivings that capture our collective consciousness and attention are designed, in fact, to scar the grid and to change the energy of the ley lines beneath the earth. But then the energy in those ley lines are directed to obelisks that were intentionally placed in certain locations because the ley lines where the tragedies occurred flow directly to them. And those pin the energy down, channeling it deep into the ground and then funneling it to the towers that transmute that dark, heavy energy back out to us. So it's both in the ground and then it's being transmitted by air as well. So have we not been under mind control? Absolutely. But we've also been under energetic control, because these events and the ley lines, and then the energy being funneled in the ley lines, have been funneled all around the earth, underground, then being funneled up above ground too. Because it's not just the Eiffel Tower that is an antenna broadcasting that energy out to us, but it was in fact shown to me as being any building in the world with a metal tip on top of it. And here are some other notable examples of towers or buildings that has metal on top of it that is designed to transmute that dark energy out to literally cover us like an energetic blanket. And considering that many of these are on top of actual churches, well, that really does make me wonder. So while I had sat down to look into what I thought was about two little girls by the name of Liberty and Abigail, and I thought that this was just about one crime in one city, I in fact see that this is an entire network of Masonic lodges that are the glue of these towns, and all of these notable events that occur, whether they're school pow-pow events, or they're missing kids, or they're unalived kids. These events that we all know about on the world stage are in fact ritualistic. And now that I see that, I cannot unsee it and I cannot unknow it. Because not only is our country a Masonic one, but any notable event is clearly one too. Just like the one in Delphi, Indiana. And if you are wondering, is there a Masonic lodge in Delphi? Well, of course there is. There's a historical lodge in Delphi that opened in 1842. And while population records did not yet exist, the best estimate is 500 to 700 people had lived there. Now, this lodge does not currently hold meetings, but there is another lodge in Mount Zion, just 5 miles outside of Delphi. That one opened in 1856 with an estimated population of just 600 people. So that's 2 Masonic lodges within a couple of miles of Delphi and one in Delphi proper that served 2 cities with a total population of Delphi and Mount Zion of just 1,200 people. Notable. So now let's circle back around to the purpose that all of this serves. Now that you see how many Masonic temples there are and the dates that they were incorporated in these truly tiny towns, the answer will actually, in fact, make a lot more sense. Because the location of all of these Masonic temples sprinkled around sleepy little towns was in fact with the intention of hijacking the ley lines in the United States as a whole. And every city in which blood was spilled that was orchestrated by the Masons creates an energetic incision into the earth. And then once that is created, it coats the earth with blood, and then it corrupts the earth as well. And then those cities, irrespective of the population size, anchors the energy down into the earth. So not only do the Masons, where there are temples, literally own the city, they also control the energy directly in the city itself, as well as the energy that flows underground. And then every time there's a notable event that captures our collective consciousness, well then all of that attention is actually acting as a booster pack in directing the energy to the obelisks with, again, further ground the energy into the earth, and then send that energy out into all of the locations that have a spiral or a metal tower on the top of it to coat the earth with the energy. And well, then you may be wondering why. So guess what, guys? The United States, with the US Constitution and the Bill of Rights, is one of the earliest and most influential examples of a truly free country. Allegedly, supposedly. Now, we also have the world's oldest functioning constitution with a Bill of Rights that guarantees our freedom of speech, religion, press, assembly, and due process and trial by jury. And while other countries have followed, such as Canada in 1982, Germany in 1949, and South Africa in 1996, as well as India in 1950, the United States Constitution is the oldest and was a pioneer of its day. So when a country and its people are, in theory anyway, designed to be so free, but the world is not actually designed to be free because of the cabal, well, they have to find other ways to corrupt us, which is what they've done with the lodges and the corruption of Earth's energy and the establishment of buildings with metal spires to transmit all of that energy out on top of us. So all of this actually makes me wonder if there would be any crime anywhere in the world if not for the Masons corrupting the energy and then essentially corrupting us as well. Like maybe everything we see on the news is in fact just a reaction to the energy, and it is not inherent to human nature at all. Like maybe without it, we could all live in peace, which I know sounds far-fetched, but look at it this way. If a city like Hollywood, Florida, and its 2 Masonic lodges can influence and then produce the unaliver of Adam Walsh, guess what? It also produced John Walsh, the founder and creator of America's Most Wanted, which has to date captured 1,100 fugitives worldwide, 17 criminals from the FBI's Most Wanted list, and has helped locate 50 missing children. So one could say that despite the Freemasons' best efforts to create fear and to capture our consciousness and to grid the country with low vibes and to corrupt us, have they in fact even won? Or are they just delaying the inevitable? Because we are indeed in a period of foretold divine timing, and truly nothing can stop what's coming. So that is what I have for you on Delphi, the Masons, the Statue of Liberty, obelisks, the Eiffel Tower, and the hijacking and corrupting of the ley lines and our own personal energy. I hope that you guys have enjoyed this video, perhaps found it to be thought-provoking or insightful. I remind you to please take what resonates and leave the rest behind, because not every reading and not every reader is for everyone, and that's perfectly okay. And also, this is your reminder until next time, to stay in the high vibration.